Welcome, everyone. The Indie Council is in session. This is a place for the leading voices from across the industry to gather to talk news, titles, and everything indie. I'm your master of ceremonies, Jill Grote, the Indie Informer. And joining the council today with all their official titles, making everything run smoothly at Ivy Road Games, Soft Knot Week, Wholesome Games, and Geeks and Ground, Jenny Wyndham.
Hello.
Hi, Jenny.
Attempting to help run things smoothly. We'll see how it
Yeah.
goes.
I've decided you do it all. Like it's just basically it's just Jenny all the time.
No.
6-1 Indie Creative Director, Account Executive at Vicarious BR, and working way too hard on the Indie Game Awards, Mike Towndrow.
Hi,
He is actually here, everyone.
I'm actually here. Hey, I don't know this game Spirit Swap, by the way, banger.
I've
I'm
heard
excited to
about
play
this.
it one day.
Yeah.
Aw, thanks.
I'm gonna put a very funny picture on because Mike's camera is broken and we
Can you
cannot see
put
him.
can you put one of the hot guys from Spirit Swap instead?
Yes.
Thank
Okay.
you.
I'll just put your head on their body.
That's me.
This is what's
Oh
happening.
my gosh, yes.
Photograph.
And also joining the council, Pen to Pixels overseer, MinMax cohort, podcast host, and inexhaustible streamer, Janet Garcia. Hey, Janet.
Hello.
I took a sip right as I introduced you,
I
hoping you
know.
would say more than hello, and then you just stared
The
at me
second
like,
I left it at just a hello, I saw you taking the sip, and I'm like, well, no one can save her
Yep.
now. Like, I
Nope.
just,
this is just happening. Move my camera over a little bit, I feel.
Janet, can you give me a tour of the Halloween decor?
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
Oh, yeah. I have, for the audio listeners, I have a little trick or treat sign. I have
Classic.
one of the masks from BioShock, like the people who wear those like bloody little, like, I don't know, animal masks. And then a
Mhm.
ghost. And he's
But he's
happy. He's
friendly.
got a smile.
Cute.
So
Yeah.
he's a friend.
Yeah,
It's
he
not all
loves being
scary.
dead.
Yeah, he is, if this was like an indie game, he'd be like doing something wholesome, even though he was dead. You know what I mean? It's like he's helping get people together through
Finding
the beyond,
memories. Yeah. There are a lot of
Only
games
good
like
memories.
that, actually.
He's
Yeah.
smiling. Yeah, honestly, a lot of stuff is just like, what if you like help a ghost get closure? But there's not a lot of stuff where the ghost helps you. I mean, I know there's that one with the different animals in the house that like date each other.
Yeah,
That sounds like way grosser than
Love
it actually
Ghosty.
is. It's actually a
Love
very cute game.
Ghosty.
It's a very cute looking game. Yeah, Ghosty.
Love
Um,
Ghosty, I think. Is
Love
that
Ghosty,
right?
yeah.
You're Mike, you're here somewhere.
Yes, Love Ghosty is correct. Sorry,
Love
I'm trying to
Ghosty.
stay
Yeah.
silent for obvious reasons.
The rare
Why are you
Uno
trying to stay
reverse of
silent?
Oh,
They
there
help
she's not a
you.
client anymore, so it's fine. Yeah. Love
Oh,
Ghosty's
okay.
great.
I
thought
just
you
want
could
to hear
speak
more
on
of
it.
Janet pitching games improperly. You know, it's like, what are the incorrect pitches for each game?
the technically right description, but horrible imagery.
Yes.
I'm like, the animals are all getting together. Like, it's like, well, I wouldn't really say it's that, but technically it's not untrue.
We're watching from Beyond the Grave. Yeah. It's a great game. Everyone should go play it. Speaking of games and playing them, and I don't know how to transition.
Indie games.
Yeah, indie games. Let's talk about indie news. We talked last week about the Steam Next Fest and some of our feelings about it and some of the changes we felt were happening. But it looks like we have some hard data, which comes to us from the Game Discoverer Co. newsletter. And Janet, I believe you were the one who was the first to kind of shout this out. So I have some bullet points. I'm going to link the whole thing down in the doobly-doo so people can read the whole thing because it's all really interesting. But the main things I want to cover, factually speaking, are that demos for this event have jumped dramatically. So in June, it was around 1,800 demos. And then in October, it was 2,700 to 3,100. Like a wild jump.
It's overwhelming.
Yeah, 100%. But as we get farther down into the data, I find it very interesting. I'll just jump down. The concurrent user numbers shot up, but the follower increase stayed about the same from last event to this event. So it doesn't seem like those numbers are actually hindering, and in some cases, maybe it's actually helping. I think that's wild, but again, they changed a few things to help some of the not top tier, like top wish listed already people just keep growing, which included randomized showcases, that top part where you get to see a game getting played. Like they randomized that. The trailer carousel down below shows games from players that are similar to you and what they have wish listed, which is an interesting thought. Um, but also might add to some interesting things like the tags in all of the kind of like top games. A lot of the top games featured first person shooter. So like does that cause a kind of bubble? Um yeah, I don't know if y'all got a chance to kind of look through this, but I had a few questions regarding um some of this. So, like the changes that are more to do with other players and what they're playing, does this change anybody's tactics or ideas surrounding sending out early demos to media? Because I know we had all talked about our emails and like how much we were getting sent. And I know that's usually a big push because you want that sort of, you want to be seen during this event. But if it's not up to that as discoverability, but more just players? Like, does that change how you approach things, especially from the PR side?
Uh, we were kind of all these changes are very new, so it was definitely like building the plane as it was in the air a little bit, trying to figure out like what works best for the overlord that is the Steam algorithm. The randomization part of things definitely made things like interesting. So like for the carousels, for example, let's say there were, I don't know, like cozy, gardening, and adventure were some of the carousels, and casual. I know that was one of them. Um, my clients who would fit some of those descriptions, I would have them change out their top 5 tags on the Steam page so that they would cycle into those specific carousels a little more often. So that was one tactic that we implemented from June to this new one. And the biggest thing is still like in terms of like sending out demos and stuff, like the charts are still the same as they were. So like most wishlisted, active demo players, like all that good stuff. It seems like that was the most impactful from at least our side of things. So
Mm.
full disclosure, Luma Island is a Vicarious PR client. I think they were on one of those charts that
Yes.
you
Mhm.
linked, Jill. I think she
Mhm.
was like, they were like number 6 on like the most active, most wishlisted, something like that. And being yes, claps. Being top 10 on those charts like pretty much throughout the week definitely helped visibility quite a bit, because obviously like the higher up you are on those main charts, those main lists, the easier it is to see them. And yeah, that's where the pitching demos out early and getting traction ahead of Next Fest really comes into play. The randomization part, like you mentioned, it's obviously randomized. Even when I was like browsing through the Next Fest stuff, like just the main page, especially on Steam Deck itself, I would find a game, I would click into the page, and then like immediately go back, and it was automatically randomized. And I was like, oh well, I forgot the other game that I was kind of
Yeah.
into. So that was a little bit annoying on a user side of things. But yeah, it's, I think it's all good changes, just trying to keep things fair. But yeah, when it comes to like the PR side of things, when it comes to actually trying to, I don't know, for a lack of a better term, game the system a little bit and trying to like benefit our clients, it definitely makes things tricky. But I know on the user side of things and just like the devs who may not have the resources for proper PR and marketing, it definitely actually gives them a fair fighting shot. And even things like I was shocked to see, I was shocked to not see like Marvel Rivals really high on the list
Mhm.
constantly, like a major quote unquote AAA IP. I thought that would be dominating the charts throughout the week, and it really wasn't the case. And I think that was courtesy of the randomization feature.
Anybody else want to jump in on that one? Not seeing any.
Yeah, I think
Okay, I was like, Jenny,
yeah.
I'm looking over at you, and I don't know. I don't want to
Yeah.
shout out. I don't want to shout you out, but
Yeah, I think I think the idea behind having something that's more algorithmically based on the wish lists and like similar wish listing behaviors of other players is like a really good idea in terms of if you've got 3,000 games, there's got to be some other way to try and get what is more catered to you. I was just, reading this is really interesting because the data is showing that for the lower sort of like 50% of games, it actually raised the like what is it? Raised the ceiling, raised the waters. Like
The
games
floor?
seem to raise the floor. Yeah, it raised something.
Something was raised here.
For
The thing that's
those
The
like
low
roof? Did
is
you
now
raise the
higher.
roof?
We raised chickens.
So it seems like it was overall beneficial to developers, but I think what was really interesting, even talking to my fellow co-host for Geeks and Grounds, who, he is not as in tune to the Steam festivals. He is very much like, I just go into Steam and I'm going to try the demos that it recommends me. He said that his experience was actually quite negative this time around. Like he felt like the algorithms, they were recommending games, he was going for them, and he was quite disappointed a lot of the time. And so it's really interesting to compare the data here to like that. Admittedly, it's one person's experience, who knows, but I think it shows that there is still room to finesse a lot of this and to try and improve how this system works. I think it's really interesting. And I think it was via a Twitter thread that I saw from one of the Steam product folks, but he said that it shouldn't impact the way this algorithm works. It shouldn't impact like your ability to catch games that are really interesting to you, but I find it interesting that like it takes a day or so for that data to really surface the games that are strongest fitting to you. And so for me,
Yeah.
I'm like, the festival's half done by the time it feels like it'll be the most useful. And for folks who hop in on the first day, are they missing out on awesome demos later on? And maybe I don't understand how it works, and maybe that's not the case, but that's a question I had when looking at this and how the structure was different this year.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that because for me, and I know for a lot of other people who are in my community, you jump in on the first day and you get all of your demos downloaded and then you spend the rest of the event like playing things. So I'm not really necessarily, I think somewhere in here it says like it took the first 3 days to kind of get all of that data and then it started um cycling things through. So I'm like, I don't know if I'm going back on the third day and checking anything out. I am sticking to kind of what I am playing. And on top of that, I think that the jump to that many demos does a disservice to this sort of change as well because you're not
100%.
you're not curating. And if you have a curated list of things, maybe this works a lot better. Maybe we see these numbers improve like notably. But yeah, I'm very interested. The other thing that I found really interesting as far as like a change that's more nebulous is that Next Fest is being seen, according to this article, as a marketing beat versus a kind of hands-on experience, and that is changing because Next Fest isn't going away. And I think that's so intriguing, just the difference between what that means as like a kind of player-based interest of like, oh, I've played a game and now I'm interested in it, versus like if you are in a trailer, if you are mentioned amongst the things that are in the Steam Next Fest, then you automatically have a bump. Like it is important to get that kind of word of mouth going. So like it kind of made me wonder, does it really matter? Like there probably isn't any sort of data you could collect for this, but does it matter if people played it as much as if you were heard being in it? You know what I mean?
I think it
I
depends on
think,
the situation.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
We all think a lot of things.
Everyone was like,
So many
yes,
thoughts.
still.
I guess I'll go first. I think that definitely I think to me the dream is that someone does everything, right? They played it, they wish listed it, they're following they're in the Discord, right? Like I think the dream would be someone does everything. They tell a friend, they start doing that stuff. That would be the ideal because then you check all the boxes, help it surface to more people, all of that. But ultimately, a win is a win. And if you can get someone to be at all a little invested in the game, whether that's a wish list, a follow somewhere, hearing about it, like that's more than you maybe had before. And certainly I wishlisted like a lot of games during Next Fest that I didn't necessarily play because I'm a little, everyone does their wish list differently too. Some people, it's legitimately games that they're like, I know I want to buy it. I'm going to wish list it. So that way when it comes out or it goes on sale, I can get a notification. You, Jill, you talked about how you use it as a calendar that you're constantly like curating and checking back on. For me, I use it as a big giant list of just like things I wouldn't mind knowing a little bit more about or coming back to. So I'm a lot more free form with my wish list. If I think your game looks interesting at all, or a friend says it's interesting, or I followed the game, like I'll just wish list it and it'll like, okay, cool. I'm kind of going to be a little bit in the ecosystem. So I definitely think, such a large part of gaming is thinking about playing games. Like the bigger part of gaming is the stuff you do when you're not gaming. It's like the lead up, the talking, the trailers, the conversation, the more like there's so many things that go outside of just playing. Even if you think of, especially within the indie scene, some of these games are not necessarily that long. Like I spend more time talking and thinking about some of my favorite indie games than I did playing them. And that's kind of, a large part of it as well. Like besides the marketing, that's also a part of like the culture of being a fan, especially a hardcore fan of gaming. And I would say if you're someone who's checking out Steam Next Fest, you are to me in that hardcore realm, right? You're not someone who's just like, oh, I kind of wander into the corner of Target and I'll pick something up, which is nothing wrong with that, but it's a different way to engage with the hobby versus people that are taste testing, reading the stuff. It's like, yeah, you're in it. And I think being in it is also just kind of looking and thinking about playing something.
Yeah. I'm also very interested in the kinds of games that are jumping in. Like we talked last time about more known games that are like obviously it's not an indie specific thing, but like free to play games are jumping in, and it seems to be taking a lot of the share of interest for what's happening in the top 10.
We also talked about how some already launched games snuck in there somehow, and maybe like they opted in, and like there's something happened with the algorithm, whatever it may be. I also noticed that there were quite a lot of games without demos in there. And I guess there's no actual rule that like you have to have a demo to be a part of Next Fest, but I just with how many jumping nearly 1,000 games, I kind of hope that like, or I kind of wish they limited it to games that were only presenting demos just to like soften the blow a little bit. And also if you don't have a demo, I'm not sure why, as it as a new developer, maybe you hear about Next Fest and you just want to get in there, or you want to be part of the excitement, whatever. But like, it sucks that like, let's say you are a brand new announcement or whatever, you don't have a demo and you burn your one Next Fest way too early before you have a demo. It's kind of a bummer. So yeah, it would be nice if there was like a little bit more regulation there. I also want to shout out, because after where we were talking about the data and stuff, and like the whole going back 3 days later, seeing how things have changed. Worth noting that right on cue, this Next Fest once again did break on the back end, and it was a nightmare to try to track any numbers or anything like that. That is a lovely tradition from Valve, a nice present for their friends in PR when clients are asking for updates and whatnot. So yeah, like the whole data thing, like that's personally that's a big reason why like even like sneaking into the media preview, just like whatever games, whatever demos are available, download them on day 0, day 1, because I know it's just gonna eventually break at some point.
Yeah, and just to clarify, because the games that didn't have demos, that technically is not correct for them, because when you register for Steam Next Fest, one of the criteria is includes a publicly playable demo. So
Oh, interesting.
there must have been something that happened in the back end. I wonder if maybe in sort of like a good faith interpretation, maybe they like thought they were going to have a demo, they didn't, and then like they weren't pulled out in time. But yeah, but technically every game that is in the Next Fest should have a demo publicly available to play.
Yeah. I do not envy the person. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, and I'm looking at it right now, the requirements, because I was like, this is so weird to me. It says it has to be not part of a previous Next Fest, and it cannot be a prologue, preview, or short form version of an existing game already released on Steam. So
interesting.
Yeah, there were. Yeah, something must have just happened because there were plenty
Yeah.
of already released games and games without demos.
Yeah, I definitely don't envy the person whose job it is to kind of curate and police 3,000 demos or so even just for the poor people at the back end of Valve who are trying to deal with this event, I hope for them the numbers go down a little bit, because that's how these sorts of things get overlooked, because you just have so much. Was there anything else in this topic? Again, there's so much to this. It's a very meaty breakdown of all the things that are going on in Steam Next Fest, and it is really interesting and illuminating to check out. So I'm going to put that down below. But if anyone else wanted to shout anything else before I jump over to another topic, this is your chance. Okay.
A lot of good stuff.
Okay.
No.
I was just gonna say, that I thought it was really interesting. In the piece, the newsletter that was sent out, it was mentioned that part of the, because one thing they looked at like was like concurrent users like in games in Next Fest, and
Mhm.
just talking about the fact that one reason that October was so much bigger, besides the fact that like, well, there's more games, so maybe there's like more games that have multiplayer, so then more people playing, but that also they had a partial Steam front page takeover for 6 of the 7 days of the fest, which
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily happen if there's a quote busier time of the year where
Mhm.
presumably, bigger games, maybe even, I don't know how, if there's any level of, I don't know if paid placement is a thing in Steam. I assume no, because it's not said, but I guess I don't know if that's true, but whatever, right? Like they are have different things that they're kind of like advertising, getting people into in ways they curate that. So it kind of also shows that Next Fest, besides obviously being put on by Valve on Steam, can be bolstered if it's given just more attention by the platform that is hosting it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I actually gave a second so that anyone could jump in if they wanted to. I'm going to switch over to Outer Sloth and their pitch review breakdown. This is another one of those kind of really in the weeds businessy things, but it's one of those things. This industry is so opaque. It's so rare that you get this kind of inside look that's just out there in the public space. By Forrest W, and I don't know what the W stands for, and I probably should, but they are very careful to say often and early in this document, which I will link, that this is sort of a personal preference thing. Like, it could be wildly different if you get another person at Outer Sloth. It could be wildly different if you are pitching at other places besides Outer Sloth. And by the way, Outer Sloth, if you haven't heard, if you haven't checked out our previous thing, is the sort of funding label that Inner Sloth opened up during Steam, or not Steam, Summer Game Fest, I want to say, is when they announced this, to help fund other indie games. So they are receiving pitches from people who are hoping to get this kind of financial backing from them. And this whole document just talks about what is more likely to get you greenlit. Um, and it is so interesting. Just like the human element is present during all of this, which I love to see. And I love, as a human being and as a person in this industry, to think that this is the norm. But I suspect a lot of these sorts of docs are a lot more business minded. Um, but it is just really nice to see humanity in this. Like, even in the business section, I have jotted out, it says, please don't work 7 days. Like, if you are planning for your timeline and you put in that you're going to be working all day, every day, you don't plan for birthdays or special events or Thanksgiving or, whatever holidays you have, like, you haven't planned out your time correctly. I'm like, that is such a cool thing to see. And I don't know if that's just because I've been in the dark about how all of this works. You know, I think back to people who don't know how the media side of things work. Like, and especially when I was an intern and I started getting into how all this media stuff worked, I think the human element was the thing that really opened my eyes and surprised me about how this works, because it is a surprising amount of like, yeah, we don't really like, there is no professional set way that all of this gets done. There is a lot of like human to human interaction, and like obviously there is a path to follow and there's a lot of like how all of this goes down, but like some of it is just like connections and vibes, and we're doing the best we can. Um yeah, it's really cool to see. I think unless anybody wants to jump in just on that particular topic, I want to shout out a few things that I saw in
Um,
this.
yeah, I'm just jumping
Janet
in
was
all
like,
day
I'm
on
ready. I'm
these.
going to make sure she
I'm
can't
like,
finish that
I'm like, I had to
sentence.
jump in early on the jumping because I'm like, I don't. Yeah, I think now obviously this is not to say that this is like that there's a less. What I'm going to say is technically a less favorable reading of what you just read. It's not that I don't, but I think the favorable reading is also true, right? Because you want people to make work in a way that doesn't destroy them. But also, it's just not realistic to destroy yourself every single day. Like, the reason crunch exists, or the reason that we talk about crunch as like, it's a set time still, right? Like, as horrible as it is, it's a window of time. The idea, you can't, if you show up and say, every day I'm just going to crunch and that's how I'm going to get this done, like, you literally can't. So I think obviously, yes, part of what they're putting forth with being for indies by indies is a mindset of humanity for sure. But the other aspect is just it wouldn't be a realistic timeline to give. And also, if you ever do, which is not, I'm not saying that they're trying to make sure you have room to crunch, but if you ever needed to, we've all worked on things where you need a little extra time. If there's no flexibility, like, it'd be great if you have a plan to do it 4 days a week, because if you want to stretch to like a fifth for it, having more time than you think you need is always needed, because you will always need more time than you think you need. So I feel like that's also the other layer of it, where it's about having like a realistic timeline. Like, if you think you'd need to die for this to make it, you're 3000% not making it, because one, it's not sustainable, and two, you're probably gonna need more time than that. So you need more time and you've used all your time. Now what? It's like, that's just, so I think that's the other layer to a call out like that, besides of course the humanity of making a good work structure and being able to lead a group of people ethically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really, really like this. I mean, Forrest is a wonderful person. I'm been really excited because I heard in the winds that he was working on a blog post like this. And as someone who also has done like being a part of Kowloon, working and seeing behind the scenes and taking pitches like this, it was great reading this process, because it's like, I know how we do it with Kowloon. How did Outer Sloth do it? And so it was really illuminating from that end. I think what's really exciting is seeing how nebulous this process can be. I think a lot of the times, especially when developers are asking like, what do I do to get my game signed? I think not because it's intentional, but I think it gets broken down to like, oh, you have a deck, you do this thing, and this is the formula to get money. And I think what this blog post does really well is show how personally based it can be, in terms of like the people who are reviewing your pitch, who are looking at your game, and where they're at and who they're working with can have as big of an influence on your game getting signed as your game itself being good. And that's like, for better or worse, that's just what happens. Is like, human beings will review your game pitch, and you will bring the best thing you can and hope that they resonate with it. But like, humans have their own interests and their own preferences, and I think Forrest really outlines that well here. That being said, he also does a really great job of outlining like a lot of the ways that you can really stand out, and some of the ways that you can just sort of shoot yourself in the foot a little bit. One of the things that always got me was when in a deck, a game would be like basically compare themselves to other games like Undertale, or like, again, I think he mentions Baldur's Gate 3, and it's like something like that, which like we've seen it so many times as pitch reviewers, but like, if you've never pitched, you don't know that it's not a good thing to maybe compare yourself to some of the biggest games of our generation. And so I love how, even though it is very like human in the writing, there also is really specific actionable stuff of like, try to do this, maybe try to avoid this
Yeah.
from someone who's
Very
seeking a lot of pitches.
specifically, Forrest writes on that topic,
Yep.
saying every time you pick a game for your market comparisons, uh, deeply and strongly consider, do you want someone to compare my game to this game? Don't use outliers in your data. You don't have the resources, and whatever you're going to do, uh, whatever you're doing won't stand up. And very specifically, yeah, he talked about Baldur's Gate 3, because it's like, do you really want someone looking at one of the greatest games of all time and comparing it to your game? Like, is basically what Forrest says in here. It's like,
Yeah.
I understand you want to talk about maybe different mechanics or whatever, but this is such an interesting take, because it is, for media specifically, very easy to say like, this is a game that's got an element of this game and the combat system of this game and blah 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 of this game, and like, that's good for getting an audience to understand very quickly what it is you can expect when you're playing it. But to connect those, to have those expectations put on you suddenly, has got to be a very difficult thing when you're trying to
Mhm.
sell a game to someone who's literally got to give you money for it.
Yeah, it's like it's about expectation setting. Like everything about games is expectation setting, but especially when you're asking for money, it's about setting the proper expectations and mitigating risks. And so it's really great to see that that is to me, those were the themes of this piece of this blog post. This idea of, hey, if you're asking for like $1 million, you have to mitigate $1 million of risk. If you're asking for like $100,000, which in game funds is very little, $100,000 of risk is less, and so you may get away with pitching a little bit differently than a $1 million pitch. So I think if anyone is interested in sort of how the cookie crumbles and sort of how the sausage is made, I don't know, food analogies. I think this is a really illuminating and really honest reflection on how people look at pitches.
I also really liked, because I had been thinking about Steam Next Fest, there's a little section in here where Forrest says it's common, it's pretty uncommon, but it's cool to see demos and marketing events in the production timeline. So like, you're starting to see what we had talked about, marketing beats, uh, as part of these pitches just to get your game funded, which is a sign of the times. I think the last thing that I found particularly like that stood out to me was, we had talked about, well, I mean, we talk about a lot how important it is to be like in going to in-person events to like make connections. And some of the games here that he talks about getting funding, um a lot of that had to do with actually meeting these people in person and having known them to some degree. But even if that's the case, it seems like, you know, it can be a little like a double-edged sword, because then you have to turn down people you know personally. But Forrest says, we were friends with Versailles, and I've put in, that's the Venba developer, before they pitched us, but we actually gave them a soft no, pending concerns with the scope of their game. I have to dodge spoilers, but it's a pretty big leap, and they don't have much material supporting they could pull it off. Um, but the only reason that they did go on to sign them was because they were able to dive very deeply into what they were going to be doing and how they were going to be doing it. Um, but yeah, I feel that had they not already had this connection with the developers, that ability to come back and prove yourself probably wouldn't even be on the table. Um, so yeah, last thing I want to shout out here. It, again, it shouldn't be a surprise. I feel that all of this is like, it's so transparent. You know, I'm so surprised with how out in the open all of this is. But Forrest says, Outer Sloth doesn't need to make money to ensure we get paid, because Inner Sloth pays our wages. So like, that's such a cool like thought process. Of course, they're worried about the bottom line and they're worried about the revenue. Um, but it is a lot about indies supporting indies all the way through. So it's really cool. I feel like I haven't heard from Mike, and I'm worried that he's dead.
No, yeah, you're good. No, because y'all
Are you
nailed it. Yeah.
okay?
Oh,
Good. Okay.
yeah.
I can't see you, so I don't know if you just like one of your cats has
Faded
attacked
into
you.
existence. No, I'm
Yeah.
just listening. Also, I like when Jenny says schmillion.
Chameleon.
Yeah, I like that a lot too. I feel like new monetary go-to just dropped when you said
Yeah.
that.
I'm stealing that from now on. Yes,
Thank you.
Jenny.
I would like schmillion dollar as well.
Yeah.
I think too, like I think last thing I'd want to say on this with what you mentioned, Jill, where with the financial aspect and what makes them kind of a unique publisher, I feel like that's so like I don't ever want to overly idealize any aspect of, indie development or, especially they're also like new to publishing. So we'll see how things go. But I feel like that is one of the real pain points of development, whether it's indie or AAA, of the idea of, again, it's not enough to be good. You have to like make money and you have to make a certain amount of money and there's like so much pressure. And obviously, like if you are in a business, yeah, I get that you have to make money. But not being able to have runway to have commercial failures, especially if you are able to have like acclaimed product or a team that has room to become a team that can create an acclaimed product, like that is really unfortunate because like not everything is going to work out perfectly. It'd be like it's like in life, right? Like if you don't have any, which obviously, life is also hard and costs a lot of money, but the less financials you have, the less money you have, the more you have to like make decisions that you might not necessarily want to make, but that you have to make financially. And it's not a good position to be in. And it's an unfortunate way that the businesses tend to go. So like this kind of having that bit of cushion is like really exciting for that reason because it can be there's so many things at play for an indie game making the money it quote unquote needs to make. So yeah, continue to be excited about the stuff. It's like the indie of indies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Speaking of indies, let's jump into topic of the show, which it is now late October. We are getting into the last few months of the year. So we are starting to think about and get ready for Game of the Year discussions. So we want to talk a little bit about what games might be headed that way, what games we still want to catch up on, and just generally thinking about how Game of the Year is approached not only by us but by this entire industry as a whole. So, starting off with our backlogs, what games do we need to play? Mike, where are you right now?
All of them. I need to play all of the games, Jill.
Yeah, that's
So
sort of how it feels.
So just to give folks like a little bit of a peek behind the scenes, the four of us plus a few other individuals are currently in the process of like whittling down nominees for the Indie Game Awards. So we have a big old list here that is very intimidating of things that I would like to play, but some of the kind of top ones, the first being Self Loss. This is a narrative-driven adventure game that I fell in love with. I think it might have been during this first Next Fest or lockdown. I couldn't even like properly tell you the concept of the game anymore, but I think it's very
Big
reminiscent.
whales.
Big whales, yeah, facts. I think it's very reminiscent of oh my god, the game where you play as like a lady with the
Jet the Far Shore.
animals.
Oh
No, not Jet the Far Shore.
a lady with the
No,
animals.
if it was Jet
With
the
the
Far Shores, I
animals
would say
and
Mike doesn't have to
you're
play it.
you're in purgatory.
Damn.
Spiritfarer.
Purgatory, Spiritfarer, yeah.
Spiritfarer's
Very
I also don't like
reminiscent.
Jet the Far Shore. I'm with you, Jill.
Yeah,
I'm right there with you as well. Yeah, very reminiscent of Spiritfarer, big tearjerker. Totally like it's one of those games that when I played it over lockdown, it just stuck with me all of those years and finally came out a month ago and I have not touched it yet, and it makes me quite upset that I haven't touched it. So that's the big one. I'm gonna rattle off my other ones because I do have to bounce in 11 minutes.
Yep.
Total opposite, Aero GPX. It's F-Zero. It's indie F-Zero, and I am all about it. Something I've had on my radars for years now. Finally launched. I don't feel like I talk about it a lot, but I'm like, aside from like when like Victory Heat Rally pop up, but I'm a big racing boy. I like arcade racing quite a bit. I can't go fast on my feet, so I like to go fast in the cars, despite not having a license in real life. So yeah, RGBX looks killer. It looks like crunchy old school PS1 F-Zero, and I've heard nothing but wonderful things about it. I'm gonna skip that one for a second. Grapple Dog 2, I think it's Grapple Dog Cosmic Canines.
That sounds
Uh
right.
I feel like the original, despite it getting rave reviews from people who played it, was heavily overlooked. And I feel like the sequel is also being heavily overlooked.
Yeah.
It is a love letter to the Game Boy Advance platformers. The first game is wonderful. It is a 2D collectathon, joyful, vibrant little adventure. And the second game looks like not more of the same, but like more of the same, which is a good thing. So very excited to play that. And the other one that was getting a lot of kind of word of mouth on socials, but it looks like it didn't get like as much attention as it should have, just based on
Yeah.
Steam reviews, is Judero, which I don't know if has anybody
I
played
have.
Judero yet.
Yeah.
Jill, is it worth?
It's so Celtic.
Okay, cool.
It's I think that's going to be hard for some people because the narrative structure of
Sure.
because the game is very Scottish. Um but the narrative structure of a traditionally Celtic story doesn't work in the way that most people are used to narrative. So things are just sort of like, one of the bigger myths in Celtic lore is like, and then he turned into a fish, and that's the end. Like, there's no moral of the story. It just like, okay. Um, but it's fantastic. The visuals are so bizarre. Um, I am loving. I haven't played it all the way through, but I have loved
Sure.
what I've played of it so far.
Nice. Yeah, and there's obviously a whole bunch of others, a bunch that y'all are gonna list as well. I will say, like, I've only played I played one season of Neva. I almost said Neva. Neva so far. I'm loving it. I just got a key for Fear the Spotlight, which obviously that's my jam. I loved it from SGF. Um, so yeah, there's quite a bit, and obviously, yeah, things like you guys are gonna mention it, but obviously, Thousand Times Resist, Groon. There's so much. So.
Just to let you know behind the scenes what's happening in the dock right now. Jenny has
Jenny
just
filling
typed
it.
in
I'm
Fear the
adding to my
Spotlight.
I'm like, oh yeah, I'm
That game
screenshotting this for later so I can make
Yeah.
sure my backlog is properly organized.
Jill, what's the runtime on Fear the Spotlight?
It's
It's a
like,
short banger, right?
yeah, it's short. It's 5 hours, I think it took me.
God, love it.
Perfect.
Oh,
Yeah.
you'll love to hear it.
Yeah. Go have fun and tell me what you think. I was texting Mike to be like, hey, how are you feeling about it? And he's like, I haven't played it yet. I'm like,
Yeah,
"Damn."
I didn't get keys. Despite being homies with the PR representative, I did not get keys until yesterday.
Yeah.
Also, some older stuff. Like, I still haven't played Indica. I still haven't properly played Cryptmaster. I still haven't played Click Holding, even though it's only an hour long. Yeah, it's too much.
Yeah, there's a lot to get to. I think, Mike, do you need to jump out at this moment?
For the sake of a clean cut, I can.
Let's go ahead and do that. We will talk about you in good ways, I'm sure, as the podcast goes on. But we'll see you next time. Bye, Mike.
Bye bye.
Bye.
So, with Mike gone, let's talk about games that I think a lot of us have on our list collectively, and just kind of talk about those as a big group. So I think the big ones that I am seeing repeated here are Thousand Times Resist. We're sorry,
Yep.
Jenny. We know
It's okay.
we know this is a game. It's on the list. I promise. Animal Well shows up a lot. I think Arco is something a lot of us have. And then Lorelei and the Laser Eyes is something that pops up. I am seeing in other people's.
Mhm.
I think these are all games that, unfortunately, like for Animal Well, especially for me, it's going to be hard to jump back into because
Yeah.
you're like, I'm sort of like, should I just restart because I don't know where I am in the
Oh,
mysteries
yeah.
anymore, and there feels like there's so much you need to remember.
How far in are you?
I'm fairly far, I think. Like I haven't gotten past the I haven't gotten to the secret deep surface under dark secrets.
Have you
But
gotten
like
like the four flames? I guess I'm like, I don't know how much
Yeah,
to
because you
say
need
'cause I don't.
it's like, classic video game. You need X things, and then
the, the,
something
the,
else
the
happens.
Yeah.
Kind of vibe.
yeah, I don't think I've gotten all 4. Or maybe
Okay.
I have and I haven't gotten
If
whatever
you've
the
gotten all
next
4, I would
part
definitely
is.
try to figure out what's going on and just keep going.
Yeah.
If you haven't, I guess you might need to, but I don't know. The whole experience of beating that game was kind of traumatic for me, so I'm probably not the best
Oh,
person to
no.
ask. But
Oh yeah, I remember
it
this.
got too much was going on for me. I'm like, you know what? I had my fun, and then I'm like, it's time to end the game. Where do I need to go? It's not cute anymore to me. I'm not charmed. I want to know where I need to go. And then I'm like, cool. Now what do I need to do? And then I'm like, great, we're done. And then I finished it bitterly, and then my heart was softened by the fact that it ends with, and thank you, the player. I was like,
You're like,
thanks, I
okay.
guess.
Welcome.
It was a pretty good game, But yeah, it's definitely it seems like a tough one to pick back up after a long time for sure.
Yeah, they don't give you anything when you hop back in. That's the rough part. It's like you're
I'm
just
like,
left.
what are all these buttons? I remember I picked
Yeah.
up some tools recently that changed the
I
way things
think you could
happened.
I would say depending on how many flames you have, it might be worth just trying to figure out. You can
Yeah.
look up. But it's tough. You're in a tough spot.
Yeah.
I know.
You really
'cause
messed up,
I
Jill. I
really,
don't know what you're
really
gonna
messed
do.
up. Not just finishing, but you get busy, no?
So
No, I
And
get
then
that, but this is like the worst. This might have been one of the worst ones that you could have done. I imagine
I-
Lorelai might be low key similar in that
but
it's
at least
progressing
Lorelai
puzzles,
has a lot of the stuff kind of back ended, so you can look back
Yeah.
and see everything.
Mhm.
You can't look back at anything in Animal Well.
Nope.
And I know we have a lot of games to talk about that we still have on our backlog, but I want to where do you guys put the marker for okay, this is a game I can put on my top games list? Like how much of the game do you need to play? Because
Ooh.
Animal Well for
Mm.
me, like even though I haven't finished it, I'm like, yes, this is a top 10 game. Like I already know this because of the way that it's built and already I don't know if I necessarily need to see the end of this game to know that, even though, Janet's experience makes me think maybe I should just to be
I
able
need
to
you
see
to. I'm gonna need you to go
if
down that hallway. But you're
okay.
smart, so I don't think you'll have a problem. I think because you're smart, you can just put it on the list.
But I think that
that's not true for everybody.
yeah. But there are a lot of games, especially there are always a lot of games, but this year in particular, we have games where you really don't have that okay, the credits have rolled and that's your point of marking when you finish a game. So in Balatro, do you count winning one game as having played enough to know that you've played? How about UFO 50? Do you have to play every game in order to put that on your top 10?
Such a tough question.
Grun, which I know a lot of us have on our list, it has a lot of endings that you kind of collect throughout. Do you play until you hit one ending? Do you have to finish for the final ending?
Well, I
Well,
think
for
it
Grun,
kinda
I would turn that to y'all, right? Because I think there's some games where I'm trying to think of. Oh, okay. Like Nier, that's a game where people tell me over and over again, I know that it ends, but you really haven't finished it if you haven't done that. And another AAA version of that is RE2. Playing that game for the first time, people are like, you gotta play the if you're Leon or Claire, you gotta play it again, even though you finished it. I think some games yes, some games no. So would you all say Grun is a game where you kind of quote unquote need to see all the endings, or is it more just a nice to have?
I think you end up seeing all the endings in Grun, most of them. I don't think you need to in Grun, personally.
I'm kind of with Jenny on this, but at the same time, that big ending puts so much in context, and there's so much of what I love of this game in that
Mhm.
it's so hard to say oh, collect 8 out of the 11 endings and you're good or whatever. I definitely wouldn't say the first ending you get you should not
No.
stop.
It's hard because I think it really depends on the game for me. Like, I think I can play a lot less Balatro and feel like I know what that game is to me because it is like systems based. Once I understand the system for myself, I feel like I can gauge whether or not for me this is like a high ranking game of the year type status. When we get to like narrative games, I think I personally need to play a bit more because I've also just had some narrative games like by the end really turn out to not be what I think they are, or they just really fall flat. And so I think depending on the game for me, like I will need to play more personally than others just so that I can get into it. Like UFO 50, I've only played maybe 12 or 13 of the 50 games, but the system of that game is so strong for me. I feel like it's up there. And like even though I don't play all of them, I feel like I get what the game is going for and it's strong enough for me. I can like make a pretty educated opinion on it already.
Yeah.
Um,
What do
yeah.
you think about like Slay the Princess for two different reasons? Pristine Cut is coming out this week. I think maybe today as people are watching
Or
this.
28th, is that the day?
I was thinking it was the
24th?
24th.
Maybe.
I think as people are watching this, it's probably out.
The 24th, yeah.
So would that count as a 2024 game at all? But also, how do you put it in this? How much of that do you need to play? Because that's also a very narrative game.
Yeah. And it's also
Uh,
very systems driven with
yeah.
the runs. I mean, Slay the Prince is just so good. I don't know. I think it's hard. I think when you play a game, sometimes it is maybe just vibes. And I feel like, I don't know, the writing in that game in particular was so strong. I went through like a couple runs and I was like, I don't even care about the ending. Like, this experience has been so good so far. Like, I'm willing to like put this up for myself. It's not scientific. It is vibes based after a certain point, but
So
I
much of this
also
industry is vibes based,
it
Jenny.
is. Well, and I don't think you need to, because I think this kind of goes into the question of like, oh, do you need to have finished a game to really know if you like the game? And I'm just like, I don't think you do. I think after you've played enough games, generally, if it's like, if you know your taste, you can kind of sense for yourself like where things lie. Now, if we're talking about like for an award show or something, that's maybe different. But I think for personal top games list, I feel like it's a pretty intuitive thing at the end of the day.
Right. I think there is something to the feeling that I want to put this in my top 10, even though I haven't
Mhm.
finished it, being an even greater thing somehow, an accolade to that game and the testament to how great that game is, that even though I've not completed it, I recognize how good it is versus
Mhm.
like I've played this game all the way through and it was a 7 out of 7 all the way through, you know? Um, yeah. But going back to the games that I have on my backlog, I want to shout out Nine Souls. I know it's so good. I really need to get through it. Besides some of the games we've already talked about, Mini Shoot Adventures is another one that I really need to get back to and I
Nice.
really need to shout out because I've heard so many people say this is such a great game and I just haven't gotten around to it. Janet, what's on your list?
Yeah, I'm like marking them up to have my own system here. I think too for the last thing on the finish it. I don't think you need to finish it. I think finishing is a nice to have, but then
Mhm.
you are while you mostly know you are lightly calling your shot. Like I remember the year of Cult of the Lamb, that was in my top 10 like holistically and not even just indies, and I definitely was a little like nervous because I hadn't finished it. But I'm like I feel really good and I had put a lot of hours into it too. So I think it depends on your style like a game that's really long or that can be long that I don't finish, it might be offset by the amount of hours and part like elements of the game that I have seen. And then I finished that game and I was like, oh yeah, this solidified. Like this is totally on my list. I feel great about where I put it. And that was like a nice happy outcome. Yeah, but there is a little bit of
Mhm.
slight danger. But usually, like Jenny said, you have to really mess it up at the end, unless it's a really like narrative game, and then you might want to just double check because sometimes
Mhm.
people really do miss those endings
Yeah.
of those
Yeah.
narrative games. On my list, besides the ones that we mentioned, I have Arctic Eggs. This is a game that I saw like in passing from many different people that I know, and it looks like just a weirdo little thing. I barely even know what this game is. All I ever see about this game is someone holding a pan and there being eggs and breakfast parts. But then looking at the trailer, there's a bunch of other stuff going on. It feels like a weird art installation that I'm walking in on. And I'm guessing I'm either going to love this game or bounce off it real fast. So I think it's going to be quick work either way. But yeah, like I don't even have either of you played this?
I saw
No.
your title and I was like, I've never heard of this, but I'm looking at like one of the screenshots with the eggs and bacon in the pan. I'm like, no, I've absolutely seen this screenshot. So I'm
Yes.
like,
This looks
okay.
amazing.
And you know
Yeah.
what? Actually, well, I guess I will read the description on Steam for audience sake, but frankly, I don't even want to know anything about this game. I know that like some colleagues in passing seem to have enjoyed it. It's overwhelmingly positive on Steam. I'm like, you know what? What is this? $10? What's the risk? You know, it's not that bad. The description is eggs, perfection in 2 parts. The simple whites, the sublime yolk. Each the lesser without its partner. Chorus and verse, a symphony of flavor. The catchy tune reminding us of warm baths and late night movies. The elevator music to whatever lies beyond. Okay, that's a great description because I don't know anything still, and I love
That's
that.
great. I want to play this now so much. This is
Yeah.
now I'm putting this on my list. So
Yeah,
I'm
like
gonna actually
I've
type this
genuinely
up.
heard from like a lot. It's on a handful of lists. I've seen it slightly on Twitch and maybe TikTok. It seems like a weirdo thing, and I love a weird little art piece experimental thing. So that seems like a cool one. I also have Buckshot Roulette. This one also got a lot of acclaim. Another quick hit title. It's kind of in that it's very, do you want to play a game darkness infused without being like explicitly hyper scary in terms of
Yeah.
horror. Self-harm trigger warning because it is
also-
about playing Russian roulette basically with somebody and you're trying to kind of figure out how to win the situation. And I think that dark versus, it's very reminiscent of a game I talk about a lot that I played on itch.io many years ago called, I think it's called Last Supper, where you're eating dinner with a bunch of potato salad cultists and you have to figure out how to throw out the potato salad without them seeing so that you don't get poisoned. So I'm like, yeah, this seems like a more, oomphed version of that. But Jill, you were going to say something about
No,
Buckshot
it's
Roulette.
also a really good strategic game. Like
Yeah.
you
That's what I
have
hear.
there's like a 50-50 shot or not of like they tell you how many bullets are in there and how many are blanks and you're making decisions based off of what you have and what you know about what the other person has just done. So it makes for a really like it's a very tense but really cool strategy game.
Yeah, I forget too. Is this also a technically no end? Is not dying
Yeah,
the
I
end? Like,
think
what's the
this-
vibe here?
I think this is one of those games we could put under how much of this do you have to play to understand.
Okay.
Definitely. So
And then my last like big two, and then a small shout out was Tactical Breach Wizards. I know people are kind of not mixed on the game, but some people were into it, some people less so. It was one that got a lot of hype going in, so I'd like to at least check it out. But two that I guess Pepper Grinder has also kind of been who you ask, but as someone that really loves platformers and did love the demo, I'm like, you know what? I got to give Pepper Grinder another shake, for lack of a non-pepper pun. Yeah, so I want to check that out. I think I'll at least enjoy it. And Crypt Custodian is my other one as well. That seems to have gotten some good praise. And you're a cat, right? I like cats, so it's like it seems like a good time to go. But of my real top, 1,000 Times Resist, Arctic Eggs, Grunt, and Lorelei and the Laser Eyes are like my biggest like. Without diminishing the other games, I feel like of this list. Oh, and Mouthwashing as well, but we already agreed we're going to play that for content for the podcast. Those are among the highest like prestige, I feel like, of the list. But I also want to venture out into other things that I'm just interested in, even if they don't have quite as much hype. But in my dream world, when it comes to like top 10s, best ofs, I've played a lot of what other people have on their best of and kind of see like, hey, does it hit for me? Where does it land on mine? Like, I think that's sort of my dream world, is that I'm playing other people's faves to come up with my own like list of favorites.
Right. And that makes for a really cool end of the year for us because the way that the Indie Council does things, we've stolen unabashedly the system from Kind of Funny, where it ranks based off of where everybody has ranked their games.
Mhm.
So like when people like Janet and Mike throw wild left field things in there, things, you know, I have to go to Jenny and be like, please, Jenny, I hope that your things are normal. I want Grun to make it. But yeah, Jenny, what else do you have on your list?
I think most of it's been covered. The really big one for me is Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. I swear, I like look at that game probably once every week or so, and I'm like, maybe I start it tonight, and then it just never happens because I know that game is going to require me to like take notes. Like I have the journal for it. They said I
Yeah.
feel so bad because they sent it to me, and I'm like, I still haven't used it. And so Lorelei is the big one. I really want to get to Crow Country, just to complete like my survival horror stint, and also because that had just such high praise from a lot of people that I really respect. I think everything else we've mentioned, Nine Souls, mouthwashing. I've honestly been adding to my list this entire time. So this has actually
Same, yeah.
expanded my
Yeah.
backlog more than
It's
really
as
helped me
dangerous.
narrow it down. Yeah.
It's as dangerous for us on the show as for everybody
Uh,
listening and watching. So yeah, I think Crow Country is one of those I haven't finished, but I don't think it's going to land on my top 10, which is
mm,
another interesting thing to kind of think about when you're doing all of this as well. Is like, what games have you played where you're like, okay, this is a good game, and I'm
I've seen what I needed to see.
yeah,
mhm.
like for me personally, Crow Country, I 100% if it wins top indie awards or whatever, I am so happy. I'm glad to see it there. It has a lot of elements that garner that kind of
Mhm.
praise. It's not my game, and I know that. And
Yeah.
that's sometimes really hard to like come out and be like, this great game that everyone loves is not really for me. Trying to be brave, like, Janet is always out there being like, this is my real thoughts about things.
Dude, I didn't like Crow Country either. Not that it's like, it's not like it's ass. Like I see what's there, but I think my beef with, and it's so weird because Crow Country is like so the game that like I've always wanted in a way, because I love I love the walking sim layer that survival horror is. It's like I walk around a creepy little place and I solve my puzzles. And Crow Country is like, do you want to walk around a creepy little place and solve your puzzles? And I'm like, yeah, this is great. But I think Crow Country, my number one beef with it is it's so small in the areas that you're checking out. And I feel like it is one of those puzzle games where they're like, hey, we have some puzzles for you to solve in an order. And I'm like, like I think if they had it a little more free form where you could kind of tackle them on in different orders, I might have been a little bit more compelled. But yeah, I mean, Crow Country definitely has a lot going for it. And I can see why some people do like it or do think it's good. But I'm like, I just feel like it didn't have the breathing room, I think, to be as enticing or as exploratory as I feel like I was hoping it would be. So Jenny, I'm excited to see
Yeah.
what side
Jenny
of the
comes
Crow
out.
Country you land on.
She's just
Yeah.
like, Crow Country's the best. It's number one.
Also, I always
Honestly,
forget if it's country or county, and
Same
that's
here.
not
I
related to the
went back
game,
and
but it does
forth.
bother me.
Yeah.
Because I
I
typed
think
it
the
as
problem-
county, and then I was
Yeah.
like, wait a second, and I
No,
added
it's-
the R
it's-
in there.
I feel like
Oh.
county would have been better. Like I don't know. Now I'm just kind of like, because I feel like it's small, like a small county. It's like a little area.
I think the problem for Crow Country with me was that I had finished Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, which is another kind of classic RE take in the modern day.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have the old classic style like mechanical sensibilities.
Yeah. See, and I'm nervous because like I have been playing a decent amount of survival horror, and so I'm like now I'm kind of nervous going into playing Crow Country because I'm like I've played a lot of greats lately, so I'm like, has that primed me to not be as satisfied with Crow Country? Because now I know like I've experienced these other games that are like definitely top in class. Honestly though, I was actually quite pleased looking because I was like, I feel like for the most part, I've played the games that I like really wanted to play this year, which I feel like this is maybe
Yeah.
a first for me. I'm like, I don't feel like I want to play a bunch more games. Like I still have a backlog, but like I don't feel super crunched for time. Like I think everything else that I'm going to get for me feels like cherry on top. I'm just hoping to like solidify some of these opinions.
I think what's nice about the indie scene, especially, is that because I'm almost surprised that I am in not horrible spot. Like there's definitely a couple games not on this list that I maybe started and would like to finish. Like even something like I don't necessarily think it'd be in my top 10, but I did really love my time with Flock, and I would like to finish it because I'm enjoying the game. So I have a couple cleanups to do, but I think the beauty of indies is that they often are shorter, so it's like easier to finish them. So yeah, shout out to indies because you can go through like a lot. Like if you really try, you can beat like multiple indie games in a week. And sometimes stuff's shorter on the AAA side, but a short AAA game is like way more hours than like what a short indie might be. So it's a good spot to be in.
Yeah. I think for my honorable mention kind of lists are things like Manor Lords, which I absolutely love, but it's still in like a lot of early access kind of things. And things that I'm like, I really need to get back to that, but I don't know if it's going to hit on the same level. So
if we're shouting at early access, I do have to. Are we shouting out games that we feel like people should play yet? Are we not on that yet?
Let's do that. Let's shout out things that people do. Like we're going into those discussions, you know they're going to show up. So what is on that list?
I think everyone will be so shocked when I say I think everyone should play 1,000 Times Resist.
Say the line.
She's here to shame us.
I'm here with the word of 1,000 Times Resist. Red to blue, everyone. Yeah, that's like for me the standout. I've been trying to evangelize everyone to playing that game. It's genuinely one of the strongest narrative games I've played in a very long time. The voice acting is really compelling. It's good. It's weird. It's like one of those games you try to explain and you sort of go down this rabbit hole and you sound a little bit insane. But it's a powerful game, both on that like sci-fi level, but also on a very human, real, grounded level. Second shout out would be Fields of Mystria. It's early access, so I don't know if we're counting early access, but I think Fields of Mystria is honestly like maybe the top cozy game, farming game that came out this year.
Yeah. I've put like 50 hours into that game. I'm not gonna lie.
I need to get back to finish like the early access chunk.
Yeah,
well, but yeah, I think I'm also saving that for the 1.0 to bring it back out for list stuff.
Yeah,
right. I know that new update, and I'm excited for people to go in. But I'm like,
be so good.
I need to not play it because I need to wait until 1.0 and really, I need to forget a lot about that game so that I can go back and
see. But also, like, what if you just did like menial tasks, like just grind it for money, so that when 1.0 comes through, you can like buy the town.
Yeah. Are you like that's a question? Are you going to be able to just like continue your game as part of 1.0?
So. Yeah, because
if not, like
you're
like Sarah,
like your
you know, I like you, but like
Sarah,
what's going on?
We coming after you.
Sarah would never. There's no way. There's no world where it doesn't carry over. Yeah, there's no way. Like
it would count in 2025's ultimate betrayals.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It would be. Though.
They're like, we adjusted for early access inflation, and they like everything is nerfed slightly on your income. Also, ahead, I forgot if you answered in Discord when I mentioned it. But Jenny, Duck Detective. Did you finish Duck Detective? What's going on with that?
Yes, I love Duck Detective. Was that this year?
Okay, great.
That was this year.
Oh my god. What is this? Okay.
I'm behind on your podcast, but so I'm like on an old episode and you're like, oh, Duck Detective. And then I went, you know, since I actually know you, it's like I can have like a social version of the otherwise parasocial relationship I have with your podcast.
But yeah, no, oh my God, I can't believe Duck Detective was this year. Yeah, that is like also top tier cozy game of the year. Super solid.
Yeah.
I'm
very good.
Love Duck Detective.
Other games?
Yeah, one of mine, a light tip of the cap to Botany Manor. I don't think it's making my top 10 because it's good, but not that good. But at the same time, like I want more people to play it. I think it was a really like well-designed, solid puzzle game, walking sim. Like I really enjoyed my time with Botany Manor. I think one of my potential top 10s would be Critmaster, even though I haven't finished it yet. Incredible take on the typing game genre.
Absolutely.
Integrating a little bit of like real-time combat, lots of like also dungeon crawler, really striking art style, and just like an incredible design in terms of the responses that the Critmaster can give you. It's a little bit of like guessing the word game, puzzle game as well. So there's just like, if you are someone who likes to type and enjoys words, Like, this is like one of the best word games I've ever played in my whole life. Like, Cryptmaster is so freaking cool. It's like the perfect stream game. Everyone gets into it. Like, it's Cryptmaster. Like, I try not to be this person, but I struggle to imagine something that someone wouldn't think is good about the game. Like, I don't really have. It's not necessarily a 10 out of 10, but like, I don't have notes. What would my notes be? Maybe I'll develop some as I finish. But it's really, really good.
And so for mine, games that I think people should be playing, specifically because I think they're going to be in the top 10 discussions. Balatro, of course. There's no way
Yeah,
that this game
yeah.
doesn't make it. This is an indie powerhouse. I think this is not only going to make indie top 10s, this is going to make top 10s. Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, which everyone has on their list to go play. You do need to finish this before probably the next month as people start to get their top 10 lists out there. Grun, I would love to see more people jump into. Neva is high on my list, and I definitely know that's going to show up. That's at least going to show up for like art direction or design or that in that category, if not for best story or whatever. And I also want to shout out Until Then. I think that hasn't gotten a lot of love because it came out kind of early in the year, and it has the potential to hit for a lot of different indie categories as well. Um, but yeah, I think we have UFO 50, of course, is going to be in the discussion. I wonder how much we're going to have the discussion about early access, especially Haiti 2 being in there. We'll probably see. I want to put down right now one of my first predictions for the Game Awards. We'll probably see some sort of category that caters to early access or probably like most anticipated game I know they've done in the past. And Hades 2 being in that list somewhere. So
Yeah.
I got distracted by Janet putting notes to
My
herself
notes to
in the
self.
chat.
Yeah. I had to put somewhere and I'm like, I don't really know where I want to write it right now. Just my list of games to get to. I wish I added Until Then because I hadn't gotten to that one either, Jill. So good shout out.
Yeah. But it is bizarre thinking that we are so close to these Game of the Year discussions, and I still feel like I've got months and months of time to check everything out, and I really don't.
Yeah, same.
And I'm looking at my coverage calendar, and I'm sort of like, okay, I gotta find some space for this. But everyone, get ready because it is coming out. So if put in the comments anything that you haven't played that you think you need to get to for the end of the year, or anything we've left off of the Game of the Year kind of top tiers that you think should be there, and we'll check that out. But let's head over to games we've been playing. Jenny, you've been playing continuously Signalis, which is a good
Yep.
game for this time of year.
It is. I finished one of the endings of Signalis. I found out from the community that there are multiple endings and there's a secret ending. So I will be going back and exploring that because, yeah, it's just kind of a masterclass. Like we were talking about Crow Country earlier, and honestly, one of the reasons I'm a little bit apprehensive is Signalis is probably one of the best survival horror games out there, just right now in general. And so to go from that to playing Crow Country, I feel like I'm putting that game at a bit of a disadvantage, I guess. But for folks who haven't played Signalis, it's a very classic survival horror game. Where you play as Elster, who is this replica, which is kind of this like android robot that's given functions. And you have to explore this abandoned facility to figure out and look for this missing person that you feel compelled to find. And a lot of the game is about discovering why you're searching for this person, and figuring out sort of the lore of this world and like what replicas are and what this technology is. And it's really, really good. I'm relatively new to the survival horror genre, so a lot of the things that it does really felt really, really accessible to me as a not adept player at the genre. It has things like you're limited to 6 items in your inventory, but if you want, you can always I think there's a way you can expand it, so they have that accessibility point for players who are like fresh. It's a beautifully done game. I have really no notes for it other than you should play it if you're at all interested in survival horror. And I honestly think it's a good, maybe not a first one, because it does depend on a lot of tropes and a lot of mechanics and like trusting that you kind of know what it's doing in sort of terms of referencing survival horror. But I think if you've played one or two, it's a great one to move into. Really good. Just, yeah, I love it. I'm really sad I hadn't played it till now.
If only we could put it in our 2024 top 10.
Honestly. But it came out, what, 2022? I'm like, I hope it was in all the lists in 2022.
It'd be a lot of work, but one day we should do like I don't know, assuming the podcast lasts for like within the decade, we could always do like a game of the year each of the years and kind of look back on that.
Okay.
Because I do think we could use, like, in the game industry at large, like more space for like dated coverage, for lack of a better term. Because it's like, that's a very natural way that regular people play games that we kind of don't usually. And I think it can be really fun to go back and play something from earlier years, especially something as iconic as Signalis and, the other heavy hitters in the indie space.
Totally agree. Yeah, I think there should be more time for us, because also it's like with the space, it's like we kind of remove ourselves from the hype around the game and like really get to settle into like the legacy of it. I don't know. I think there's a lot of value in replaying. Obviously people think that because it's like that's why people replay games like Chrono Trigger even now, but I think having more space for that would be great.
I have a really good segue. I'm just going to steal the time to. I have, in fact, gone back into the backlog and I have played Devotion, which is by Red Candle Games. This is the game that sparked the controversy heard around the world. Red Candle Games had originally put in a sort of in the background something that might have possibly referenced the Chinese president. And Devotion, Red Candle Games, is a Taiwanese studio. So a lot of geopolitical issues were sparked off with that, and the game was taken off. But you can go play it on their website now. I'll put that link in there. Which also kind of like I went on Tales from the Backlog with Dave Jackson. Oh, I hope I didn't just mess up your name. Tales of the Backlog is all about going back and playing these big games that you just never got to. And because I'm a big scaredy cat, I usually don't play like scary games. So Jenny and I have been doing the same thing, going back and playing this like big scary game. And it's spooky, but it's so good. And I go and break down all of what's going on in there. It is a short game, but it is so intensely layered about like the scary thing about the game, and the best scary games is all the human elements in it, and it's not about going to hell or like a ghost or something. Like obviously there are elements of that in this game, but the real scary thing is what is actually happening in the world, and the fact that this has probably happened in the world for real. So yeah, I don't want to ruin it for anybody who hasn't, but please go back and play that game. It's a first person atmospheric, really kind of horror game where you basically go through the same apartment over and over and over again through different time eras, and things happen. Does that make you want to play the game?
Things happen as you explore an apartment? Yes. Heck yeah.
But I'm scared because of the way you said that things happen.
Things happen.
Even though I know obviously it's a horror game, but
yeah, that is a really good horror game.
Again, this is the team behind Nine Souls, and seeing the difference between the two games is astounding as well. But you can still see the narrative strength that they have in both games. So yeah, go get freaked out. Janet, what do you have on your list for things you've been playing?
I am playing Tower of Dreams. This is a early access game that came into early access on Steam October 8th, so pretty recently. And it is a rogue-like vertical platformer. And vertical just in the sense that the space that you're moving is vertically. It's not as vertical as like Point P is, or as invertedly vertical as Downwell is, which Point P is just Downwell going up because it's made by the same developers. But yeah, it's really fun. It's just the movement is just really tight and well made. It has the use your sword to kind of bounce off of obstacles, which I'm really enjoying, which also makes me think I really need to try Shovel Knight again because that's literally what Shovel Knight is. And I don't know. For some reason I kind of just bounced off of Shovel Knight, like something about it didn't click for me at the time.
You were holding
But
your shovel against it. You just bounced.
yeah, so yeah, something. Yeah, I just didn't really know how to get it in the right angle, I suppose. But again, that's everyone loves Shovel Knight, so I'm like, there's something I gotta go back anyway. But Tower Dreams, super fun, really simplified, great OST, very unsurprisingly dreamlike aesthetic to the sort of backgrounds of these different towers you're going through. And one thing I love about the platforming genre is, and I'm definitely prone to quick hitting demos or games in general where I can kind of tell right away, okay, this is kind of where this is starting to land for me. And I think with platformers, especially ones as simplified as like what you get in the 2D space, it is even quicker. It's like if you play this game for 30 seconds or 90 seconds, you'll know if it's something that intrigues you. And right away, I'm like, yeah, I'm really enjoying this. And I haven't put like an insane amount of time into it, maybe like half an hour or so. Kind of got through the tutorial area, which is fairly simple to get through, and then you're kind of in the official game where you have like a shop. You can get a couple permanent upgrades eventually of like armor and things. There's enemies throughout the tower that you go through, but sometimes there's also heart drops. So I think as much as I like there's like 3 towers to go through, and I don't even know if I finished one. Each has like a certain amount of levels in it. So as much as I didn't just necessarily zoom through it, I think it seems pretty approachable in terms of being able to get stuff along the way, some stuff that's permanent. Obviously, things are always shuffling, so there's a bit of it's not you can pre-plan stuff necessarily, but I think there's enough space where it feels like a little forgiving. I think also too having that pogo thing off the obstacles, if you fall, if you just hit, the spikes, you can kind of recover for a second, get your bearings, and then go again. A lot of the design is typical of what you've seen in many iconic platformers. So you have like projectiles moving kind of in like a bullet bill style. You have like like things that are strategically placed to bounce off of. I got to an area where there's circular not platforms, they're like little orbs that you can bounce off of, but each time you hit one, the other color like toggles. So you're kind of playing with the like, okay, I have to be strategic with my hits. So I think it has a lot of the classic platform mechanical tropes of the things that you might play with in a platformer are very present here. There's a bunch of gems you can collect, which is very satisfying. It's just like good classic stuff. Not necessarily reinventing the wheel. I think it's probably the only ding I have against it, where like for what makes it special, I don't have like a great answer for it, but I think it's really polished and really enjoyable. So if you like platformers, especially get into like the precision 2D stuff, this is a really good one that's hard without being like ultra hell,
Yeah,
So that's kind of where it lands.
that's Tower of Dreams. I suspect that Jenny's next game is slightly different in that it may be very unique. Tell me about Sorry We're Closed.
Yeah, so I'm still trucking along in Next Fest demos. Thank you to all the devs who have left the demos up past the
Yes.
festival. Oh my God. Um, One that I played recently was Sorry We're Closed, survival horror. So clearly I'm like working with a theme this month. What I loved about this is aesthetically it's got like a neon punk vibe to it. So you have your grimy, rusty like metal and wooden boxes and dark corridors, but then the characters themselves are dressed in like almost like rave kid clothes. It feels like you're at like a London rave in a way. And the weapons themselves as well are very like neon, almost magical girl esque. You have this like the gun is called the Hellhound gun, and it's got like a dog face on it, and it like barks when you reload it. And so it's just like a little bit more, I don't know, it's got that like sauce a little bit that a lot of survival horror doesn't have in that way. The story is you are a person who has been cursed by a demon. This demon like senses your loneliness. You're like angsting after a breakup, and the demon is like, "You're gonna love me or you're gonna die," I guess. And so you're trying to find a way to break the curse. And mechanically, I think they do something that I don't think I've really encountered before, or at least I've never played it, where as you're exploring, you're in third person, very traditional survival horror with fixed camera. But at any point in time, you can use, was it like the left trigger to switch to first person mode. And that allows you to
Hmm.
like look around the corridors a little bit, like see in places that the camera won't give you access. And you can also only do combat in that first person mode. And so there are these sort of strategic moments where you're like, oh, you see an enemy coming, you switch to that first person mode. And you also have the ability of a third eye that you can snap on and off that gives you the perspective of either like the demonic location you're in or how it appears to like other humans. And using that third eye allows you like access to weak points to shoot enemies. And so there's a lot of like interesting like perspective play happening in this game. I found the demo really fun, and it was also like the perfect amount of time. It was like a 45-minute demo maybe, and it just felt really snappy and good and left me wanting more. So I think it's coming out mid-November, November 14th.
Something like that.
Yeah. So very excited. Apparently it has multiple endings as well. So I love that.
It's going to join our list of games where we don't know when to call it quits.
Yeah, exactly.
For Mike, the audacity of this man knowing he was leaving us, he has written a game which I don't even know I should read, but I'm going to just to shame him. It says, everyone's favorite indie game, Shadow Generations. Thank you, Mike. Yeah, for me, I am finishing up one, and I finished one recently. You can see the review is up. It went up Monday. Fear the Spotlight is a
Mhm.
game that I finished, and it was something we had been looking forward to ever since we got hands on. I think that was Summer Game Fest.
Mhm.
Um, I started out like the first half and the second half of the game are very different, and I don't want to talk about what that means
Mm.
because that's going to ruin something. But I thought the first half of the game, it's all super solid and it is a survival horror in this like eh, very follow the tracks kind of way. It's a little spooky. I wouldn't say it was scary. So if you're kind of one of those people who you never know if you want to do it, um, this would be okay to jump into. The second half gave me a few freak out moments, and delved into a lot more. Instead of the first part is kind of more of a whodunit, and it slowly starts to unravel. And if you're someone who has grown up unfortunately in the female body, you might know there are some things that you pick up very quickly that you're like, oh, I don't feel good about this. Um, then you jump to the second half where the story gets a lot more personal and you are uncovering this kind of really hard facts and demons about the characters. So I liked that a lot better just because I felt like it being more personal, you're immersed in it a lot more. I thought the spooky factor was a little higher. And I just kind of like the way that it ends very wholesomely. It is a wholesome ending to such a kind of creepy game. So go check that out. Fear the Spotlight is out right now. Also out right now, Wilmot Works It Out, which is a fun puzzle game. Um, it is not a sequel, but sort of just a game in the world of Wilmot, where you are now at your home instead of working in your warehouse, and you get a bunch of parcels that are like it's basically like you've signed up for a puzzle of the month club sort of situation, but they come like every day. So you went a little overboard, Wilmot, but
Puzzle
that's
of the
okay.
day.
Puzzle of the Day Club.
Yeah, so they show up, they're in this box, you unbox them, um, and you start piecing together all of the puzzles, and when you finish, you can put it on your wall, and it's such a fun, like, oh yay, achievement. But then they start coming like bigger and bigger, and parts of one puzzle are in parts of the other puzzle, so you have to start figuring out how to get all of them together. And it is a really satisfying, fun puzzler game, and I haven't finished yet, but like go and check this out, especially if you're a fan of Wilmot's Warehouse. um so yeah.
I'm very
that's it.
excited. I'll
Yeah.
be digging into that tonight.
I know it's going to be such a game where it's just like I got my cup of tea. I'm ready
Mhm.
to just wind down for the evening. And it looks like it's going to be absolutely fantastic for that. But with that, that's the end of this week's council. Thank you to everyone for joining us. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Indie Council has its own socials at the Indie Council over. We're trying to use Blue Sky more often. I know I'm jumping on there a lot more often. That had a lot to do with the intro decisions of like, hey, maybe people are picking us up on Blue Sky and they haven't seen us before, so I should
Yeah,
put
that's
something
smart.
that's yeah, I'm like, maybe I should put something that's not just a silly pun or inside joke or something. So we're actual people with things, credentials in this space.
I'm just
But
a
yeah, we're
rando
also on
walking off the street.
it's just, I just grab someone. It's like, you look good. Yeah, but go check us out. Blue Sky Threads, Instagram. We do also have a Twitter, but if you're still over there, but jump over to Blue Sky. But this session is closed. Go play some indies. Welcome, everyone. You found the secret ending. We wanted to shout out that next week is going to be a little different on the Indie Council. I've got my cat's tail right in the middle of the camera to make it spookier. But we are going to all be playing mouth washing and then talk. It's going to be like a big spoiler cast. So Mike can't get out of it next week, is what we're saying, essentially. I don't know. Do y'all want to throw out anything in there? Any thoughts? Any fears?
It's on Steam for people that want to play it and
Yeah.
also hear what's going on with it. It is definitely a story focused game. So obviously, some people might listen even if they're not going to play it just because they want to hear about the game, but definitely benefits from you playing it before if you want to have your own experience. And it is $12.99. So if you have the means to do so and the time to do so, I believe the How Long to Beat is about 2 or 2.5 hours. So it definitely can be a one sitting game if you care to join us in it. And if not, the episode will still exist. Otherwise, you can always come back and hear our spoiler filled thoughts on it.
And I guess for folks who maybe are like, what is mouthwashing? It is a horror game.
Yeah.
So I would say just, do your own due diligence. If you are squeamish about anything, maybe look up some content warnings because, yeah, this is definite horror territory. So we're going to get into probably some gnarly stuff from watching the trailer and seeing the demo. I think it's going to get pretty
Yeah,
gnarly.
the content description tags are extreme violence, gore, mutilation, and I know there is some. I believe there is some like degree of harm slash self harm kind of discussions that are in there as well, which I'm sure we will also add those tags and shout outs to before we start the conversation next week. We'll reiterate that as well.
Okay, but if you're ready for the spooky season of next week, I hope everyone's excited to either check out mouthwashing. I know Rufus is super excited, or to listen to us. If you're not, if you're a little afraid of jumping yourself, just listen to us and what we went through during mouthwashing. Please go check it out. And yeah, that's going to be the real ending. So, goodbye, everyone.
Bye.